Okay, let's dive in. If you're like me, you've seen the movies, right? Maybe played the games.
Hmm.
The classic zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, the whole drill, the dead rising, moaning, gnawing.
Exactly. Chaos, boarding up windows, grabbing, whatever's handy. We thought we had a handle on what that looked like.
Some people probably even had a plan tucked away.
Oh, definitely. But the source material you brought for this deep dive, it just throws a massive curveball.
It really does. It suggests we were looking completely the wrong way. What if the real zombie apocalypse isn't, some future flesh-eating horror show?
What if? And this is the core of it. What if it already happened?
In a really profound, kind of unsettling way, yeah.
That's the central idea from this material. The zombie apocalypse already happened. It argues we were so busy watching the gates for the external threat.
The classic horror movie setup.
Right, that we totally missed it slipping inside. Not a virus, though. Through our screens, through all this, well, convenience.
And the kicker, according to this source, we might be the walking husks it's talking about.
Not physically rotting, obviously, but maybe animated more by habit, by distraction, less by actual conscious thought.
Exactly. Less presence, more autopilot.
So that's our mission today. We're diving into these sources, exploring this frankly chilling idea. We'll unpack what the material says characterizes this new kind of undead.
Look at the potential causes, maybe, behind this condition in modern consumers.
And explore this fascinating idea that it's not just one type of infected, but a whole range.
Right. And finally, who are the necromancers in this scenario? The forces maybe controlling things or possibly offering a cure.
The absolute core metaphor here, the one that runs through everything, is that we are the zombies.
Yeah, it's not about rotting flesh. It's about the decay of something else, critical thinking, our own autonomy, just being consciously present.
It paints this picture, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of vivid, maybe a bit too close for comfort. Eyes lit by that blue screen light.
Brains maybe not fully engaged, just endlessly scrolling, binging, buying stuff without really thinking it through.
Just sort of moving on autopilot.
And some of the details it points out are sharp. Like, we're not actively searching for things much anymore. We're just shown them.
Algorithmically curated.
Precisely. We're not really chewing on complex ideas. We're just fed this constant stream of easy-to-digest content.
And the source makes this really disturbing point that we've somehow started calling this engineered consumption choice.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
There's a big emphasis, too, on how we spend our time. More consuming than reflecting.
More reacting instantly than thinking deeply.
Echoing opinions we just saw online, maybe without digging deeper ourselves.
Rehearsing that outrage about the latest thing instead of, trying to really understand it.
Scrolling past suffering. Thumbs twitching, but maybe our hearts aren't really registering it anymore.
The source really drills down on how attention itself is the crop being harvested.
Curiosity gets dulled because everything seems available instantly.
But real depth feels harder to find. Outrage isn't just felt, it's engineered, it's monetized.
And any moment of quiet, any restlessness that might make you think, it gets immediately smoothed over or redirected into more noise.
More notifications, another feed to scroll.
It even uses this almost religious language. Escapism as religion, binge-watching as ritual.
The notifications like prayer bells calling us back.
And stillness, just being quiet without stimulation. That feels like death to this modern zombie.
Which is the grim irony the source points out, right? We feel dead without the distraction.
But maybe we're already the walking dead, animated by habit, distraction, and these algorithm-stoked desires.
That craving for the next dopamine hit, the next bit of content.
The unsettling part isn't a monster coming over the wall.
It's that we seem to have maybe willingly walked into this state ourselves.
Okay, so if that's the state, how did we supposedly get here? What does the source material say are the main causes?
Well, it points to a few interconnected things. First, this idea of algorithmic conditioning and surveillance capitalism.
Like TikTok's For You page or YouTube autoplay.
Exactly. Think about how they're designed. It's less about you choosing consciously.
And more about the platform choosing for you, based on what keeps you watching longest.
Right. Maximizing attention retention. The source draws this slightly scary parallel.
That algorithms are kind of programming our thoughts and behaviors, like a virus.
Yeah, shaping what you see, think, feel through this constant calculated exposure. It makes the path of least resistance, the algorithmic one, sort of disabling conscious choice over time.
Okay.
Second is hyperstimulating escapism and these relentless dopamine loops.
Binge watching for hours, doom scrolling through dinner. that kind of.
Mm-hmm. The material argues it's not active leisure, it's more like a passive sedative. It replaces engaging with the real world or maybe doing something more effortful like reading or creating.
It feels like that traditional zombie hunger, right?
Yeah.
But instead of brains, we're driven by chasing the next short-term dopamine hit.
That fleeting sense of novelty or validation,
Mhm.
yeah, instead of maybe seeking deeper satisfaction.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
What's next?
Then there's cultural conformity and this intense pressure towards branding the self.
Like those super fast fashion microtrends, clean girl aesthetic, 1 minute, something else the next.
Or feeling you need to buy certain things to project a specific online identity. The source suggests our social identity itself is now heavily curated through what we consume and how we perform online.
And the result isn't uniqueness, but more uniformity, mimicry.
Kind of like a horde following the latest trend dictated by the algorithm or influencers. A different kind of hive mind.
Okay, one more.
Finally, mental overload and decision fatigue. Just think about having, like, 50 tabs open.
The infinite scroll, constant notifications pinging away.
Exactly. The material says this constant barrage leads to mental paralysis, burnout, our willpower gets depleted.
So faced with all that, we just default to the easy options. Go on autopilot.
Pretty much. Just keep moving, maybe without a clear goal, almost like those shambling undead.
Wow. And the source doesn't just leave it as a metaphor, does it? It tries to connect it to real-world stuff.
Yeah, briefly. It mentions behavioral science, like trends showing declining attention spans, possibly linked to digital habits.
You can kind of see it, too, just observing people in public, heads down, glued to screens.
Right. And it touches on the societal impact, maybe voter disengagement, slacktivism, replacing real action.
Using platforms like TikTok as a main news source, which can be pretty superficial.
And the economic angle, companies often profit more from passive consumers than critical ones.
And it connects this to bigger philosophical ideas.
Yeah, it mentions Nietzsche's herd morality following the crowd because thinking for yourself feels risky.
Sartre's bad faith, acting like we have no choice to avoid responsibility.
And Baudrillard's hyperreality, consuming the simulation, the online persona, instead of engaging with actual reality.
Those add some serious weight. Okay, so if we're the zombies, shaped by all this, the source then says it's not just one type of undead.
Exactly. It introduces this idea of a whole bestiary of modern infected, mutated by screens and algorithms, each representing a different kind of behavioral decay.
Okay, break that down. The original zombie is
The mindless consumer. Scrolls, binges, doesn't really digest, repeats trends, mimics opinions, consumes thought.
and the ghost.
Emotionally detached, disappear, avoid conflict, digital ghosting. They consume trust.
Skeletons.
Hollow performers, polished surface, maybe empty underneath. Performative activism, posting selfies constantly. They strip authenticity.
Ghouls sound unpleasant.
They are the trolls, the provocateurs. Feed on chaos, stir up conflict, rage baiting, consume empathy.
Vampires. Not literal, I hope.
No, emotional leeches. Drain attention, trauma dumping online, love bombing, then disappearing. They drain energy.
Liches. That sounds like fantasy.
It's used metaphorically. The algorithm whispers. Masters of the digital dark arts, fueled by clicks, clickbait abusers, selling illusions, profiting from attention. They hijack meaning.
And finally, watchers.
The eternal lurkers. Always online, absorbing everything, but never engaging, never adding their voice. They silence voices, including their own potential voice.
That is quite the lineup.
Oh.
And the graveyard.
That's the social media landscape itself, according to the source, where the digital dead pile up forgotten trends, canceled people, a place that can treat people as disposable content, erase nuance.
Makes you afraid to be complex online.
Exactly. So if you have this whole bestiary who's pulling the strings, the material brings in necromancers.
Those who command or influence this horde.
Yeah.
And it says not all are necessarily evil.
Right, but all are dangerous because they know how to manipulate the system, our vulnerabilities.
So first, the corrupt necromancers. Who are they?
Algorithm designers focused only on engagement, marketers pushing endless consumption, political strategists creating division, influencers chasing clout, anyone profiting unethically from attention.
And their goal is basically control, profit.
Yeah. Exploit zombie behavior, turn attention into cash, engineer outrage, FOMO, tribalism.
Using addiction loops, emotional manipulation.
Identity branding that ties buying stuff to belonging. The source stresses they don't just manage zombies, they actively create the conditions for zombification.
Using new tech for old tricks. Fear, desire, illusion.
Precisely. But then, interestingly, the source also talks about redemptive necromancers.
Who are they?
Critical thinkers, mindful educators, artists with a conscience, maybe digital minimalists, philosophers trying to make sense of it all.
And what do? They use the same tools.
Often, yes, these same platforms. But their goal is different. It's to try and wake people up, to create friction in this smooth, frictionless world.
Encourage reflection over reaction, creation over consumption.
Exactly. Using things like subversive art, critical media literacy, empathy, irony maybe.
Why do they matter?
The source suggests they speak to that little bit of human left inside the zombie. They cast their own spells, memory, connection, maybe necessary discomfort, reminding us this infection isn't necessarily permanent.
So you get this core tension. Control versus compassion.
Right. Corrupt goal. Control via exploitation. View people as tools. Legacy, power, maybe chaos.
Redemptive goal. Freedom via awakening. View people as trapped or in pain. Legacy, meaning change.
And here's the really tough part the material highlights. Why is it so hard for the infected for us to tell the difference? Why do the corrupt ones seem so appealing?
Okay, why? What does it say?
First, maybe we've kind of forgotten what it feels like to be truly present, truly thinking for ourselves. Our reflection muscles are weak.
We operate on instincts-programmed responses.
Yeah. And the bad necromancer offers easy dopamine hits, simple answers, hate this, buy that. It feels good, or at least easy short term.
While the good one offers discomfort, complexity, ambiguity. The hard work of thinking.
Exactly. The corrupt says, feel something easy. The healer says, feel something real, which is often harder. You can see the appeal.
Makes sense. What else?
Second, they often use the same language, the same platforms, the same aesthetics.
So a TikTok selling junk and a TikTok trying to make you question things can just blur together.
It's all just more content in the feed, more noise, hard to distinguish the signal.
Third point.
The bad necromancer often makes you feel powerful or validated, even if it's an illusion.
Feeds the ego. You're right to be mad. Offers a tribe. Easy validation.
Right. While the redemptive one often challenges you, asks you to question yourself, interrupts your comfort zone, which can feel like an attack when you're comfortably numb.
Fourth.
The infected trust the familiar. Zombies like routine, patterns, not necessarily truth.
So if a healer sounds too different, too challenging,
They get ignored. But if they sound too much like the system they're critiquing,
they just get absorbed by the noise.
it's a knife's edge they walk, trying to embed the cure in the infected landscape without being consumed.
And the last reason.
The infection itself clouds judgment. Denial is part of it.
People deny they're zombified. Defend the exploiters. Attack the helpers.
Tragically, yes, the rescuer can look like a threat to their comfortable, if empty, routine.
It sounds pretty bleak. Is there any hope in this picture?
Well, the source does end on this maybe fragile note of hope. The good necromancers, the redemptive ones, they keep trying.
Because sometimes, just sometimes, a spark catches.
Exactly. A line of text, an image, something pierces the fog.
And for just a second, maybe someone remembers, wait, this doesn't feel right.
Maybe there's more. Maybe I'm not completely gone.
And that's enough.
According to the source, that's what they hope for. Not saving everyone instantly, but maybe resurrecting one little spark of awareness.
So wrapping up this deep dive, the zombie apocalypse already happened, uses this really potent kind of dark metaphor.
As a lens, yeah, to look at modern life, passive consumption, algorithmic influence,
It makes us look at these different forms of infection in ourselves and others.
and consider the forces, both corrupt and maybe redemptive, constantly pulling at our attention.
And ultimately, this isn't just some abstract idea about society.
No, the source makes it personal. It's about your attention, your choices, how you engage every day.
So here's maybe the final thought to take away from this. If the source is right, if the corrupt forces often make us feel powerful, validated,
Right.
offering easy answers.
While the redemptive ones offer discomfort, challenge, ambiguity to try and wake us up.
How do you tell the difference between those influences in your own life, day to day?
And maybe more pointedly, which of those experiences, the easy validation or the challenging discomfort, do you find yourself drawn to more often?